Hi, this is Ian from TurboCamaro.com. Today we're doing a front disc conversion on the 67 Camaro. This is the Chevy 250 manual drum brakes all around. Today we're taking this Wilwood front disc conversion kit specifically designed for 67 to 69 Camaros, and we're going to plop it on the front wheels here. I want to do a test drive with the drums first to give you guys an idea of what we're working with for drums, and then do the install, and then do a test drive with the disc. So this is comprehensive, full how-to install video. I haven't found it anywhere else on YouTube. I wanted to make it happen here for you guys. So let's get in and do a test drive. Alright, so full test number one. We're going to try to go from about 30 miles an hour down to a full stop without dragging the brakes. We'll see how that feels on the drums. Not bad. A little bit spongy. Alright, so we're going to increase to 60 miles per hour now. And brake. So not bad. These drum brakes, as much as they're old and not powered, I feel as though they're pretty decent. But overall, I feel like they perform fairly well. So let's get on with the install and see what we can do after. Alright, now we're going for a test drive. It's time to take the wheels off. You want to jack the car up, put the jack stands on it, get these loosened up, and take off your first wheel. Then you want to remove the hub. The hub or the drum removed, we can start to disassemble the brake components. Alright, so now you can remove the dust cover. You can pull off the cotter pin and slide the front off here. Alright, so with that off, we can expose part of the spindle here. We want to loosen the caliper so that we're able to get the brake line out of the way. Alright, so with the 2 3/8 inch nuts removed from there, we can now have the caliper loose, which is great. It allows us to get access to the upper spindle bolt here. There's a little folded over bezel here that's blocking access to turning this nut, so we're going to have to fold it back and then we can loosen this one. This is a 15/16 inch nut on top here. And now the two lower spindle bolts. Keep in mind one side is actually has the steering arm on it, so you want to make sure that doesn't rip your hand off on the way down. I do encourage these ones with a little bit of spray. The gunk liquid wrench. I had to do that on the other side too, but Thought maybe I could avoid it this time. Right, so with all the spindle nuts removed, the bolts, you've got this, which you can set free. I'm just going to put it off to the side for now. We're going to be doing the wire or the hose later. Now you want to clean up the spindle the best you can. There's a lot of grime on here, there's a lot of junk. Use some degreaser and just get it nice and shiny. Alright, so with the spindle all cleaned up, we can put our new backing plate on. Alright, so this goes on with a washer on the actual nut. What's going to happen is you have 3 shims. They're going to go here and then through, and on the back side you're going to have another washer and one of these locking sort of like crown nuts here. So I'll show you. In, put our 3 shims on the back of it, push it through, and we got to bring up our steering again. Push it through it as well. There it goes. Washer and self-locking nut. This gets red Loctite, top one only, goes to 120 foot-pounds of torque. Bottom one's torqued to 65, no Loctite. And then you use one of the factory original bolts to secure the other spindle side.
Moving on to rotor assembly, we have the disc face down and are prepped to pack both bearings with high temp grease. If you plan on any track or repetitive high-speed braking, you'll want to ensure you get a high-end, high-heat grease. This is not an area where you want to cheap out at all. Both bearings packed and the larger inner bearing installed, we need to press the retainer in with the opening facing down. I just lay a flat piece of wood on top and tap it in with a small hammer. With the retaining ring pressed in, slide the disc onto the spindle and install the smaller bearing followed by its slotted washer and the big nut. You want to check with your owner's manual, but generally you want to tighten it so you feel resistance in the disc and then back the nut off between 1/8 and 1/4 turn so the castle portion of the nut lines up with the spindle hole. Then you just thread the cotter pin through it and bend the ends back. Now we press on the dust cap by tapping it on with the piece of wood we used earlier. Remember, when you're using the hammer, less is more. Alright, so now we get to the good stuff. I'll give you a little open box on the fancy black Wilwood calipers. These are 4-valve and give a subtle racing look I was looking for. They do come in red as well, but I've always preferred black. They come very well packaged to preserve the finish. Notice the one side has Wilwood painted in white and the other side has raised text. The calipers are technically left and right universal, but the only way to use them on the raised text side would be if you were able to run the inlets on the front of the caliper instead of the back, which would be a bit unusual. Either way, they install with a bolt, a regular washer, and shims between the caliper and the mounting bracket. The shims keep the caliper spaced properly on either side of the disc. It's important to ensure all of the ends of the bolts used to mount the calipers come out at least flush to the caliper, or a hair past. You just need to use the correct number of shims to ensure the bolts are aligned to the face of the caliper, and that they are spaced around the disc evenly. If you can get that combination down, you're golden. The instructions call for 2 shims on both bolts, as I've done here. As I mentioned earlier, the caliper fits around the disc, and it's important that bolt heads don't stick out too far, and that there is equal space on either side of the disc. Also, when you spin the disc, the space should be consistent from front to back. If it looks like it's wobbling or warped, you might want to check your work or make sure a shim didn't sneak out of there somewhere. Once you're satisfied with the spacing, put red Loctite on the last ½ inch of both caliper bolts. With the calipers installed, we can open the brake pads. They're so simple to install it's ridiculous. Just slide one on each side of the caliper with the rough material facing either side of the disc and secure them both with the included cotter pin. So that concludes the actual disc brake assembly, but we still need to hook up the lines. The stock lines can't be easily adapted, so you'll probably want to invest in an adapter kit. This kit was included with the first gen Camaro disc brake conversion kit, and it makes this very simple. It comes with 2 lines and a 90-degree elbow for the back of the caliper and a metal line adapter block similar to the factory one. You want to start by installing the elbow and new line into the back of the caliper. And now you want to prep the other end of the new line with the remaining metal line adapter. This would be a good time to check the tightness of your connections and cover the new brake assembly in case you get a brake fluid fountain at some point. Now it's just a matter of disconnecting the metal brake line from the old adapter, removing that adapter and connecting the metal line to the new line assembly. You have to act fast not to get fluid everywhere. Once it's all together, fasten the new clip with the tab facing up. It's nearly identical to the original clip, but might as well use the new one. Note I installed it tab down here because it seemed too difficult to install tab up. Turns out it does go tab up, you just have to try a little bit harder, so I had to fix it later.
Okay, so with the brake line still hooked up, we're ready to go onto brake bleeding. Before I do though, I just installed this clip here for the brake line. When I showed it in the video, it was actually tab down. It needs to be tab up, so just make sure that you have that clip mounted correctly. If it slides on really easy like it did in the video, it's probably the wrong way. You've got to flip it around point it up and get it in there properly so it's nice and snug. Either way, we're going to move on to brake bleeding. You want to start with the rear passenger side. Unfortunately, I only have the 2 stands. I'm going to put the tires back on the front, move to the back, jack it up, and remove the tires on the back of the car. Alright, so this part is optional. I'm going to replace the wheel cylinder on both sides of rear wheels just because it's been years since they've been done. And if I'm going to the trouble of bleeding and flushing the system, I may as well replace them. And of course I know that I have one broken bleeder nipple on this side anyway, so it needs to be done now.
The new wheel cylinder installed and bolted down, we're ready to flush the old fluid and push any air out. I've crafted a one-man bleeder rig out of a beverage bottle and filled it up with a couple inches of new brake fluid. Submerge one end of a clear hose in the new fluid and the other end gets pushed onto the wheel cylinder bleeder. The fluid in the bottle prevents air from creeping back into the hose and into your brake system. The rest of the bleeding process is simple. You'll loosen the bleeder a couple of turns and pump the brakes to push fluid into the bottle. Once you have a hose full of airless, clean fluid, you can tighten the bleeder and move on. Just be sure to keep an eye on the master cylinder fluid level, as running out of fluid will introduce a ton of air in the system and make you restart the whole process.
Alright, so we're going to now bleed this brake. This is actually the rear driver's side. If you're starting on this, you're going to start on the passenger side, but I'm working on this side right now. I've already done the passenger side. I want to do this side because it's less hot out on the shade here. So go ahead and hook up your bleeder bottle or get a partner ready to go, and we're going to bleed the brakes. Nice clean fluid all the way up.
Jumping from the second wheel to the last one, the Wilwood calipers have 2 bleeders. They're slightly smaller than the stock one, so I needed to use a hose clamp to secure the bleeder bottle. Note these calipers actually have 4 bleeders, but you only need to bleed the 2 on the top side of the caliper because air rises up. I started with the outer bleeder first and then did the inside one. I'll definitely do them both again to be sure all the air is out, but since I've had the system open so much, I might actually go all the way around and do the whole car one more time.
So we're going to start the bedding in procedure now. Essentially you're mating the shoes that we bought with the new rotors. You have to do a series of low speed stops followed by a series of higher speed stops. So this will be, approximately 25 miles per hour to stop right here. Went pretty well. It's the first attempt at a reasonable high speed. We'll do the same thing right now, about 25. Seemed a lot smoother that time. I can tell you the brake feel is much more responsive than it has been. That being said, I bled all of the old fluid, which is at least as old as I've had the car, which is 9 years, 10 years almost. So probably a good portion of that fluid is water or just contaminated. I'm going to do another moderate speed stop here in a second. Maybe we'll do a little bit faster. And one last time from about 60. Alright, that test drive went awesome, you guys. As you can see, this Wilwood disc brake setup is just doing a great job on the road there. Drums in the back, these manual discs in the front with all new fluid. Couldn't really be happier with the setup on this. I feel like I can go race on the track now or something like that if I want to, so that's pretty exciting. Beyond that, I have to mention EFISystemPro.com actually sourced this part for me. Fuel injection is kind of their game, and they came through with this braking kit for me. Great price from a great company. I really appreciate that. Beyond that, you guys, this is a super long video, so I thank you very much for watching. Feel free to check us out, Twitter, Facebook, TurboCamaro.com, and of course here on YouTube. Please subscribe if you want to see all these videos. And again, thanks for watching.